Here's a short lesson on qualifiers and how we look at them and how we might consider them in a statement. The context of this statement is that a Major League Baseball player was coming up at bat and he heard someone yell the N-word twice. There was swift condemnation from Major League Baseball, from the park, from many others that joined in, and we could tell from a videotape who the man that yelled was. A closer examination of the videotape and interviewing other players around showed something different. The man was a grandfather with his grandchildren who was yelling the word dinger, not the N-word, but dinger, which is the name of the mascot that he was trying to get his attention to acknowledge his grandchildren. The issue went away quite quickly, except for the ball player Lewis Brinson, who made a statement about it. Here's what he said. I personally, this is again my personal opinion, I personally keep hearing the N-word. I watched the video at least 50 times in the past 15 to 16 hours. I watched it a lot, especially when I heard he said dinger instead of the N-word. It's not that I want to hear it, I never want to hear it. And so we'll take a look at this statement and find out what we can understand from it. So the first thing we notice is that he begins with the pronoun I, which tells us his psychological presence is strong here. And this is a good thing. We're very likely to get reliable information from his own words. Then we notice the word personal, personally, personal, and personally again. We know in our principles that anything that's repeated is important, and we're going to treat it as such. Importance must always be noted for whatever reason. So when he gives an opinion, when he gives the assertion of hearing the N-word, he qualifies it with the word personally. This is called a weak assertion. For example, I locked my keys in the car. It's a very strong statement. It is very likely that the person that said that believes their own words. But what if I said, I think I locked my keys in the car? That is a weakness because I'm qualifying where the keys are with uncertainty. I think I locked them in the car. I may think differently when I get to the car. And it allows for that. So what we do is we look at it, we flag the weakness, not as deception, but whether it's appropriate or inappropriate. An extreme example of inappropriate weakness, which I've seen over the years, is I don't think I shot the man. You would know whether you shot someone or not. That would be inappropriate weakness. Appropriate weakness is when you allow for another opinion. So before he asserts that he keeps hearing, not that he heard, but keep hearing the N-word, we have it's personal to him. It's repeated again that it's personal again to him. Then it's repeated again for the third time that it's personal. Then he calls it his opinion, allowing for others to have a different opinion. One of the questions we seek to answer in any statement is if the subject believes his own words. If the subject believes his own words. I personally, this is again my personal opinion, I personally keep hearing the N-word. Okay? I watched, and notice this one, you have the pronoun I, you have watched in the past tense. I watched the video at least 50 times in the past 15 to 16 hours. On its structure, the form of the sentence, it's very likely to be reliable. He's likely telling the truth here, that he watched it many times. Notice that here, watching it is in the past tense. That's appropriate because this was done in the past. Here, we have keep hearing. Not only hearing, but he keeps hearing it going on in the present. So I watched the video, and this is in contrast one to another. I watched the video at least 50 times in the past 15 to 16 hours. I watched it a lot. Again, we have a commitment in language. I believe him. I believe that he watched it a lot. I believe it was probably more than 50 times in the past 15 to 16 hours. I also note that he's probably keeping track of some form, especially of time. Especially when I heard he said dinger. So he is now elevating his statement when Major League Baseball and the hosting team came out and said, we interviewed other players, we've reviewed the videotape. The grandfather was gesturing and calling Dinger's name for the sake of his grandchildren. And it was clear when you see it on video. Especially when I heard. So this is the element of time. So now something has changed for him. He went through the amount of times, and now he's telling us the timing of such. Obviously doubting the conclusions of the word dinger. It's not that I want to hear it. This is called the rule of the negative. What someone tells us in the negative is often more important than in the positive. He tells us what he didn't want to hear. This is called unnecessary moralizing. There's very likely few people that want to hear it. I never want to hear it. So in case you think that I want to hear it, I better tell you I don't want to hear it, and I'm afraid you won't believe me, so I'm going to double down on my denial and tell you again. Not only do I not want to hear it, but I never want to hear it. So we look at this and we ask ourselves, is this 1, 2, 3, 4 qualifying the hearing, and then including the present tense verb and the contrast against the past tense verb? Does the subject believe his own words? And this is where the analyst has to make a decision on whether or not the qualifier is appropriate. I locked my keys in the car versus I think I locked my keys in the car. You locked your keys in the car? Oh, you lost them? No, they're in the car. That's something that's strong and stated as such. And here we're looking at someone who has the need to qualify 3 times, then declaring it unnecessarily at that point an opinion. It's just mine, just mine, just mine. At some point we'll say, are you talking to someone else? Is someone else involved? Then we have the change in the verb tense, and we have the unnecessary moralizing that finishes it off. And the conclusion here is Lewis Brinson does not believe his own words. This is often associated with fake hate, where someone is claiming a false claim of racism in some form or some hatred of some color, where attention can be gained, notoriety can be gained, and at the bottom line, generally speaking, as investigators say, is you follow the money. So if I can be a victim, then I can be a hero and an overcomer, and then I can get an endorsement deal or something of that nature. So we get this a lot here in the United States, where there's constant false claims and they're pretty easy to debunk. But we also recognize that beneath it is a culture that seems to profit off such things. So I know what he really wants to hear, and I know he doesn't believe his own words.